You want to turn it down just a little bit there, babe? And to an event by Let's Talk Alberta. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping things. The bathrooms are right there. Emergency exit is here and out the way you came in. My name is Sheane Meikle, and I'm one of the three speakers tonight, but it looks like it's just going to be two because Leighton seems to be running really late. So it doesn't look like Leighton may make it, so it'll be myself and Mr. Ben Trudeau. And on your way in and out, there's a couple of tables at the back, and you can also get Ben's book at the back. I highly recommend it, and he didn't pay me to say that. What I'm going to talk about tonight is the historical relationship between Ottawa and Alberta, since before it was ever a province, while it was still the Northwest Territories. So in the 1880s to about 1903, 1904, there was a huge American settler movement in the territories. And many Americans were moving north and settling. How many people here have ever heard of the little spot on the map called USONA? Yeah, well, you've heard me a million times. There's one gentleman. I live 6 miles from USONA. In the 1880s, it had a population of around 500 people. Right now, it has a population of about 8 people. But USONA stands for the United States of North America. How many people here know the little town of Rimbey? There, everybody knows Rimbey. That original name was Kansas Ridge. The city of Airdrie was Yankee Valley. All throughout the Alberta and Saskatchewan, you will find towns that still have names that are American sounding, or original names were American sounding. And this made the federal government very, very nervous because it was a lot easier, and still is a lot easier, to absorb a territory than it is to absorb a province or a state or any other formal system like that. So this was one of the main reasons why they decided that Alberta and Saskatchewan needed to be formed. In 1904, on the steps of the Manitoba legislature, Sir Clifford Sifton made the following statement. "We desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, that the great trade of the prairies shall go to enrich our people to the east, to build up our factories and our places of work, and in every legitimate way to our prosperity." Now, why do we care what a gentleman said 24 years ago on the steps of the Manitoba legislature? Well, Sir Clifford Sifton was the main architect of the Alberta and Saskatchewan Acts. So on September 1st, 1905, Alberta and Saskatchewan were legislated into being. Alberta and Saskatchewan are the only two provinces that did not get the chance to negotiate their way into Confederation. They were legislated into being, and they were given, first off, I'll ask, how many people have actually had a chance to ever read the Alberta Act? You don't count, Max. I would highly recommend that you go and you download a copy of it. You can go to the Alberta government website and you can download a copy of the Alberta Act. The Alberta Act is only a few pages long, and it is eye-opening because when Alberta and Saskatchewan were formed, they were formed as provinces in name only. They were given the rights and responsibilities of a territory, not of a province. And we've had to fight for the rights of a province ever since. In fact, the very first two premiers of both Alberta and Saskatchewan were appointed by the federal government. They'd already had elections for the governor in the territories, but when they formed the provinces, Ottawa appointed their first two premiers. So in 1913, the federal government passed the Railroad Act amendments. And what that did is it made it illegal for regional railways to cross provincial boundaries. So there were some very big regional railways in Alberta at the time. Alberta Central Railway and Alberta Northern Railway and Alberta Southern Railway. But by 1939, two of them had gone under because they couldn't move product across the provincial lines. So what this actually did is, let's say you wanted to send grain from Stettler to Thunder Bay. You would load it in Stettler. When you got to the Saskatchewan border, you'd have to offload it, put it on a Saskatchewan carrier. Then when you got to the Manitoba border, you'd have to do the exact same thing. And the Ontario border, you'd have to do the exact same thing. Funny thing is that they made the Eastern Regional Railways exempt. So it only affected the Western Railways. And in 1946, a brand new railway was formed, and they bought up all of the assets at penny on the dollars of all the railways that had gone under, and they formed Canadian National Railway. And so we've been under the gun ever since that time. In fact, it is still to this day illegal for a regional railway to cross, a Western regional railway to cross the provincial boundaries. So in 1930, the provinces negotiated with the federal government for the Natural Resources Transfer Agreement that they formed. And what that did is it transferred all of the natural resources back to the control of the provinces. However, at the time, the federal government stated that this applied to all the provinces except for Alberta and Saskatchewan. So in 1931, on December 11th, the House of Lords in the UK signed a bill, and the King decreed it as the Statute of Westminster. And what does the Statute of Westminster do? It gives control and sovereignty over the land and resources to the people in care of the province, not in care of Ottawa, in care of the province. And under the Statute of Westminster, that means that no province has any federal land in it. It was given by the King to the people in care of the provinces. So that means there's no national parks that are legitimate. There is no air bases that are legitimate. Well, there are, but they are rented from the provinces. And Alberta has got the most federal parks of any province in Canada. We have almost 13% of our landmass is in parks, from Wood Buffalo to Jasper to Banff to Waterton to Elk Island and several others. No other province has that much land mass in control of the federal government. In 1935, the federal government formed a brand new marketing board. This was supposedly to help the farmers sell their grain at a reasonable rate, and it was first made as a voluntary board. But a bunch of farmers shipped their grain in the fall of 1935 and the fall of 1936, and were sent a bill for the transit, but never got any money from the federal government for their grain sales. They did this to many Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba farmers and shipped all that grain out east to feed the East during the Great Depression without compensating the farmers. And this led to Alberta being the first and only province to ever default on its loans. If you were having all your money taken by Ottawa, you would end up defaulting on your loans as well. In 1946, this was made mandatory for Western Canadian provinces. And so what did that actually mean? Well, if you were in Ontario and you wanted to ship your grain to the United States or anywhere else in the world, but the United States is the easiest to use as an example, I'd pull up to my grain bin, I'd load my truck, and I'd drive across the line and I'd sell my grain. If I lived west of the Manitoba border, if I wanted to sell my grain to the United States, I would have to pull up to my grain bin, load my grain, pull into my local elevator, offload my grain, pull around and buy it back from the Canada Wheat Board, and then I could sell it to the United States. So it put Western Canadian farmers at a great disadvantage. Now, this stayed in effect until 2012, and that was when the Canada Wheat Board was finally dissolved. And that was thanks to the Canadian farmers deciding, or Western Canadian farmers deciding that they'd had enough. And in particular, to 13 farmers, it became known as the Dirty Dozen, that were willing to go to jail for it. And they spent between 6 months and a year in jail each for running the border with their own grain. And finally, Stephen Harper declared that the Canada Wheat Board was no more in 2012. In 1947, Alberta had just discovered our vast oil reserves. We knew that we had oil, but we didn't know what kind of oil we had until 1947. And as soon as we discovered that, the federal government came up with the Federal Control of Oil Pricing and Pipelines. And so they decided that they would set the price. We couldn't even set the price according to world prices or anything else. It was set by the federal government on what we could sell it for and when we could put a pipeline in the ground. And this stayed in place until 1950, when it was finally repealed. How many here, and I'm not going to say, but how many here are old enough to remember the Great Flag Debate of 1965? There's a few. I won't look at you directly, so you don't have to tell me your age. I can say I am too young, but 1965, our then Prime Minister, Lester B. Pearson, decided that he wanted a flag that would represent Canada. So the doors on the oceans. And the in the center represents the people. Well, John Diefenbaker stood up in the House of Commons and he said, why are you using the sugar maple, which is only found in eastern Canada? Why are you not using something like the box elder or Manitoba maple, because it's found from coast to coast? Well, Pearson did not like this, so he forced closure on the bill. And when it went to vote, not a single Western Canadian MP voted for the current flag. And hostility was so bad in the West that 2 years later, in 1967, during Canada's centennial, many towns and cities in Western Canada refused to fly the maple leaf. They instead flew the red ensign, which is still an official flag of Canada. But at the time I started school in the early 1970s, it had been memory hold. I heard nothing about it until years later when I was doing research. It had been totally... You started every day, I salute the flag, the emblem of my country. To her, I pledge my love and loyalty. And heard nothing about the controversy with that flag. In 1973, the federal government brought in the oil exportation policies, and they put a cap on all of Alberta's oil profits. Now, we were always told that in the 70s we had an energy crisis. Well, yes, it was an energy crisis caused by policy, not caused by lack of resources. If you were an oil company and you had a quota of 100,000 barrels and you produced 101,000 barrels and you had to ship the profit from that extra barrel to Ottawa, would you produce anything over above your quota? It wouldn't make any sense for you to do so. And that's the reason that we had an energy shortage in the 1970s. And this stayed in place for 18 months. And in 1974, because of the fighting of our then Premier Lougheed, that was repealed. But they were not finished with us, because 6 years later, in 1980, they brought in the National Energy Program. And at the time, Trudeau actually said, and not the good Trudeau, Trudeau actually said at the time, we are doing this to prevent Alberta from becoming the economic engine of Canada. And so when they brought that in, they brought everything in that was in the 1973 bill, with the addition that we were forced to sell a priority to the east at a price set by the federal government. So they set that price at up to 60% below market value that we had to ship it to the east at. Now, this stayed in place until 1988, and it was repealed by then Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. But it was in the election year, and he used it as he was magnanimous towards Alberta, that he was doing this for the benefit of Alberta. But the truth is, oil prices had dropped so low that it was costing them more to administer the National Energy Program than they were getting out of it. So it was not cost prohibitive for them to continue with it from that point on. So that is the main reason why it was repealed. In the 1980s, we had several other things happen. First off, the Constitution was brought home and nationalized. And I think Ben talks a little bit about that. I'm not going to go into it, but it wasn't necessarily the good thing that everybody thinks it was. Then we had the first Quebec referendum. And then in 1995, we had the second Quebec referendum. And the second Quebec referendum actually led to, in 1998, the federal government going to the Supreme Court of Canada and asking the question, does a province have the legal right to secede from Confederation? And the Supreme Court came back with a resounding yes, they can, but these are the steps that they must take in order to do it. They took those recommendations by the Supreme Court, and they took it back to the legislature, and they wrote the Clarity Act based upon it. And I say based upon it because it does vary from what the Supreme Court said. But that is what we have to follow right now, is the Clarity Act in how we move forward with try and become independent. So let's jump forward to 2012. When Bill C-38 was brought in, the Jobs, Growth and Prosperity Act, which gave Ottawa control over all of Alberta's projects. That meant that we couldn't put a pipeline in the ground. We couldn't build a highway. We couldn't build a skyscraper without federal approval, which actually goes against Section 92 of the Constitution. Those are our jurisdictions, but they took control of them with Bill C-38. In 2016, they brought in federal carbon pricing. Now, this made it so that now it's become a huge Ponzi scheme with the oil companies trading carbon credits here and there, but it killed our oil industry for the longest time. 2019, Bill C-69 was brought in, which is the No More Pipelines, and Bill C-48, which is the tanker ban off the West Coast, were brought in. Now, last fall, our Premier signed an MOU with the Prime Minister that would have got rid of these four items. But within a week of it being brought to the legislature, or being signed by them, it was brought to the Parliament for a vote. And it was resoundingly defeated. They voted that they did not want it to go forward with the MOU. Now, the worst part about it is over half of the Western Canadian MPs voted for it, to knock it down. And we're talking about conservatives here, for the most part. There's a few Liberals in there and NDPs, but for the most part, they're conservative MPs, and they voted to do away with the MOU. Okay, so that now brings us to modern time and three bills that one that is law and three that are working their way through right now. Bill C-8, which is the Internet Censorship Bill. Bill C-8 allows, with the stroke of a pen of the minister, for you to be wiped off the internet if they do not agree with your speech. And you have under that bill, if that bill gets passed in its current form, you have no recourse. You will be, no more online banking, no more Amazon, no more anything. Your presence on the internet is gone. And that one is scary enough, and it's still working. Hopefully they make some changes to it. I don't hold my breath, but next bill is C9. C9, as of July 18th, is the law of the land. Bill C9 is the anti-hate speech law. Problem is, it doesn't define hate speech. It's up to different jurisdictions. And I asked our premier about that bill, and Ben was actually there. Her answer was that she was going to do exactly the same as they're doing with the gun law, and they weren't going to enforce it here in the province. However, 3 days ago, the city of Edmonton decided they were going to enforce it. And they came out with their new report hate buses. And they started going around to people's places and knocking on their doors for comments that they had made up to 3 and 4 years ago on the internet. Well, they have backtracked now, and if you try and phone the phone number on the side of the buses, it goes to this line is no longer in service because the province did go after them over it. But that shows you the slope that it started down. Your definition of hate speech is different than the next person. If it's against the law, it was already against the law before they brought that in. They do not need to bring additional laws in to do it. And that law is particularly takes away the freedom of religion. So it doesn't matter whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jew. If you quote scripture to somebody, even in a church service, and somebody in that audience takes offense to it, which they were exempt before because of religious freedom, which is guaranteed under the Charter of Rights and Freedom, but no longer. You can now go to jail. And the scary part about the bill isn't just that you could go to jail, because you can fight that in court and maybe win. But if they seize your assets, they don't have to give them back even if you win. It says that's directly in the bill. So that is a scary bill. I encourage everybody. It is the law of the land now. And I would encourage everybody to go read Bill C9. It's a very, very upsetting bill. Then that brings us to Bill C22, the anti-encryption bill. Under that bill, all encryption has to be removed by the social media companies. And what that does is, okay, if they think you and I are colluding and they want to tap my phone or tap your phone, they have to get a warrant. They have to prove that there is. Under this bill C22, they do not have to prove that anymore. They can just openly listen to your phone calls or to your internet chatter, to all of that because all the encryption. This is the reason why, if this bill passes, Signal, Facebook, WhatsApp, have all said they're pulling out of Canada. Because if they open up their encryption, that means their worldwide network is exposed. And so it's not just Canadians that it would affect, it's going to affect their customers all over the world. Because once that door is opened, it's very hard to close it. Now that I have totally made you happy, I would like to introduce the next speaker, Mr. Ben Trudeau, the only Federalist I like. No, actually, I like a lot of Federalists, but I have to say that. The only Trudeau I like. Actually, I like his sons too, so that doesn't work either.
Thank you. Well, good evening. To clear out that subject right away, if you ask me if I'm related, yes, I am. 14 generations back in 1648 in Montreal. This is where we meet. So yeah, I'm like my accent tells. I'm not originally from Alberta. I was born and raised in Montreal in a very thank you, Max. In a very political family. My dad was a speechwriter, PR guy, media guy. one of the owner of the largest advertising company in Canada. And so I was raised in backroom of politics. One of my fondest memory is on the 1976 Olympics. I was 4 years old, and I remember holding my dad's hand while he was chatting with René Lévesque on the Esplanade, where there was all the flags behind it. The PQ came in power something like 4 or 5 months later after the Montreal Olympics. And the PQ was very well organized and something that they've done very, very, very well. And the first thing they've done, starting in 1976, they stormed the castle. So basically, they prepared their coming to power. René Lévesque surrounded himself with a great, great, great team. I was 4 years old. I still remember names of ministers that were there, so much they were powerful. And they just turned the province upside down in a few months. And then after that, in 78, they filed 8 white books. White books in our legislature are documents that cast a vision, long-term vision. And these 12 white books, my dad wrote 6 of them. And they are still at the Quebec legislature giving the future of Quebec from 1976. All government needs to obey by them. And that's how they run their show. 1980 referendum, the yes got 40%. The speech of René Lévesque at that defeat was "See you next time," and it happened in 1995. Meanwhile, I grew up in all of that environment since I'm born, hearing about sovereignty association, about changing the way Canada works. In 1980, of course, after the referendum, there was a round of constitutional negotiation. Trudeau wanted to repatriate the constitution from London, which he did without Quebec. So all the premiers met with the prime minister, and on a certain night, they told René Lévesque that he could go back to his hotel in Gatineau, and they signed without him. He learned that they came to an agreement the next day when he woke up during his breakfast in the newspaper, like everybody else, that the premier came to an agreement to bring back the constitution. So the reaction of Quebec at that time was to apply the notwithstanding clause on all of their legislation, and of all legislation from 1980 to 1985, while the PQ was in power, the notwithstanding clause has been applied over 1,500 times. So when I hear sometimes people criticizing us for using it 4 times in our history, it's ridiculous. We have to stand up and to learn how our system works and how the Westminster system is operating. I joined the Young Liberals provincial in 1988 during the Meech Lake negotiation, and afterwards we all resigned, all the youth of the party. We resigned in 1990 or 1989 because our premier, Robert Bourassa, took a position to reject our position on constitution. We started our own party named the ADQ, Action Démocratique du Québec, in March 94. We were 75 candidates out of under 25 possible. I was candidates at that first round. Our leader was elected, Mario Dumont, but we gathered 7% of all the votes of the province. And that gave our party the balance of power, because Parizeau needed that 7% to win the yes at the 95 referendum. So he sent Bouchard, they contacted us, and we sat at the negotiation table to talk about the question of the referendum in 95, and we won our question. The question that was asked to the Quebecer was the RDQ question, which is basically, do you give the mandate to the Premier to go negotiate a new deal with the federal? And if the federal is not serious in negotiation, then we separate. So it was a double clutch question. The campaign was started on June 14, vote that referendum, there are some polls in Montreal that at 6 o'clock, all 100% have voted. So the result was heartbreaking. With only 51, we lost by 51,000 votes, 82,000 votes rejected. But we had to accept it because it was democracy. But after that, what did we do? We said, okay, if we cannot separate, we'll become separate. And Quebec kept on hatching out its rights under the Constitution. It started, even if you backtrack, it started in 1954 when they started collecting their own taxes. The federal imposed its own taxes as well. So for 3 years, Quebecers were paying twice the taxes because the federal refused to remove theirs. But Quebec knew it was provincial jurisdiction, taxation. So after 3 years, federal stopped taxing Quebec. They said, okay, collect your own taxes, but then they put on the equalization system because they say we want to get a piece of it. So the equalization system exists because one province assert is constitutional right. Then after that, in 1965, the federal say, hey, here, we're creating the Canada Pension Plan. Quebec say, we're not interested in your pension plan, we'll create our own. They created their own at the same time as Canada Pension Plan. Fast forward 60 years later, right now the Canada Pension Plan has a big fund of for 22 million insured. Quebec has a big fund of 500 billion for 6 million insured. State here in Alberta than the government of Alberta. The Cross Iron Mill is the pension plan of Quebec. The outlet at the airport in Edmonton, pension plan of Quebec. Southgate Mall, pension plan. So because in their rule of their pension plan, they say if we believe in us, we will invest in ourselves. And there's a rule that the pension plan has to invest at least 40% within Canada and within Quebec. So the political culture of Quebec led them today to control their own immigration. I have a story about that. In 1981, my sister is Vietnamese. She was a boat people. And we adopted her in 1981. My parents learned that her parents and sisters were still living in Vietnam. So in 87, my dad brought the rest of the family, immigrated to Montreal. When you do that, when you did that, even at the time in Quebec, you had to go through when you were a refugee, you had to go through a 5 days class, and would teach you the history of Quebec, what we believe in, and all that. And after these 5 days, you had to sign a social contract. And if you didn't want to sign that social contract, we would not deliver you a driver's license, no social services, no health care, go to Toronto. And this is exactly what the father of my sister decided to do. He didn't want to adhere to Quebec principles, so he moved to Toronto. And it's okay. So this is how you control your immigration. This is how, and all that is provincial rights, provincial jurisdiction. Now with that vote coming in, we have to be reminiscent of what gave us the right to vote for independence. And we have to honor that liberty that we have to make a choice. I am not for separation, I've never been. I'm for assertion of sovereignty. I'm for taking all the rights that are in our Constitution and just doing what we have the right to do without asking permission. I'm for doing what Quebec does. Quebec right now has two seats at the UN, one at UNESCO, the other one at the Francophonie International Union. They are not Canadian seats, they are Quebec seats at the UN. Quebec has 38 embassies around the world, their own embassy, they call Maison du Québec. So they have one in Paris, London, Tokyo, Washington. So why? Because they have the right. It's the gérer la joie principle that was asserted in 1966 that gave the provinces the right to control their own economical agreement with anywhere in the world. So we have the right to make our own agreements. Then Quebec as well, and again, all that is constitutional. All that can be done by a majority government in the legislature. That's all. No referendum, nothing. All that can be applied. As well, the exercise of justice is provincial. Quebec has its own civil code. It's a Napoleonic code from 1802 that direct all civil lawsuits in Quebec. It's not the common law. So as a province, we have the right to do our own code. We have the right to interpret the code as we want on the criminal side as well. We have the right to moderate our everything pertaining to that. So I wrote some books. This one is like the master book. Like what I've done, I tell in there the story of Canada. The story of Canada starting in 1534. When the English won on the Plain of Abraham on September 13, 1759, the land has been cultivated, built with roads and all that by the French for over 200 years. In 1838, there was a revolt of the French because they were getting their farms seized by the English to give to Americans that want to remain faithful to the king. The result of that was 400 dead in different battles, and the 12 leaders of the movement were deported to Australia. It's a story as well of Louis Riel, who came from Manitoba but was educated in Montreal. I went to the same school as he went in Montreal. And Louis Riel, again, asserted the rights of the people over the federal government by creating the province of Manitoba and becoming the first premier of Manitoba. It's a story of a lot of people, a lot of blood that shed to be able to have the right to vote freely right now. It's a story even more recently of even my dad as an editor of the newspaper of the University of Montreal in October 70 that had his office raided by the army and all documents seized. It's October 1970, Trudeau called 12,000 soldiers in Montreal and left them there until after New Year. And 12,000 soldiers, by the way, it's only 2,000 less than on D-Day. And there was tanks at the corner streets, and not only that, but the Liberal Party gave 435 names to be arrested instantly, like during that night. Trudeau passed the order at 3:30 a.m. At 4 a.m., there was 435 people being arrested in their bed. The militaries busting in their house, crushing and pulling them out of their bed, putting them in jail. The one of them stayed 14 years in jail, 7 years without any trial. So this is the Canada I know. This is the Canada I grew in. And just to see right now the often indifference of Albertan to that question, I don't understand. And I believe it's spurred a lot from ignorance. It's spurred a lot of ignorance of the story of our own country. And this is why in my book, at the first part, I speak about the story, the constitutional story of Canada. After that, I speak about how Quebec totally assumed its sovereignty within the Constitution. And then after that, I cast a vision because I believe that you cannot be sovereign or you cannot be independent without having a vision. So I cast a vision for Alberta, including in my vision the annexation of Northwest Territory. I believe that if we make a deal with Northwest Territory and Northwest Territory become Alberta, then we have access to tidewater. And then we don't have to ask permission to anybody to bring our pipelines up north and to as much as we can. So it's a question of vision. It's a question of casting project. It's a vision of, and then at the end, toward the end of the book, of course, I moved there in 2008. First time I came here in 2007, I was working for the Minister Jean-Pierre Blackburn. He was Minister of Canada Economic Development under the first Harper government. And the Prime Minister asked us to do some links between Quebec manufacturing companies and developers here in Alberta. So I was sent on a mission. I didn't know any Albertan. So I called the Premier's office and I booked myself a breakfast with Ed Stelmach. And I landed in Calgary, drove to Edmonton. I'm an urban planner by trade. I went in to see a bit of the country. And that morning that I had my breakfast with Mr. Stelmach, I had to resign. There's a guy at the Prime Minister's office who didn't like me. and he was at the Prime Minister office. I was not. So I went and waited for Mr. Stelmach to come, and I told him, sir, I'm sorry. It was at Smitty's in Short Park. And I told him, sir, I have to cancel. Sorry, I had to resign this morning. He started laughing. He said, well, that's just politics. I still need to have breakfast. So we had breakfast together, and he told me, you know what? I know a few people in this province if you want to move. So that's how I ended up in Alberta. And I didn't do politics until we had a premier that flip-flopped on a mandate that with the vaccine that took my wife about 3 days to scrape me off the ceiling. And then I decided to join TBA. And from that, I joined the leadership race with Danielle Smith. Once she became premier, I became lobbyist and just work on Alberta Sovereignty Project. I believe it's important that we understand that we need to own our stuff. We have to understand that right now we're collecting about 500 million per week every Friday afternoon in royalties, and we deposit that at the CIBC in Toronto. They make 2 million over the weekend with our money. We need to learn to keep our stuff. We need to learn to use our credit unions. We need to learn to use ATB. We need to learn to stop trying to be more pure and stuff like that. There's a bunch of rules that came on NTB because of a scandal in the 80s with the Garmanian brothers and the West Edmonton Mall. And now if you are an MLE, you don't even have the right to have a mortgage at ATB. This is tragic. ATB is the Alberta Treasury Branch. It should serve Albertan first. Quebec in 1900, if you were a French Canadian living in Montreal, in Griffintown particularly, your life expectancy would have been 19 years old. And if you were French in 1900, you could not get a bank loan. So what do? They create their own bank. It's called Desjardins. Aujourd'hui, Desjardins is the largest credit union in North America. You know that 7.8 million out of the 9 million Quebecers have an account at Desjardins. So Desjardins, it's 500 billion as well in assets. So if you calculate Desjardins and their pension plan, there are 1 trillion in ownership of assets. So I call Alberta to do the same. I call Alberta to be proud of what we have, to take ownership of our beef that we let go to JBS in Brazil and Cargill in the States. Why? No, like we produce 75% of the beef of the country, and we let the money go to Brazil and the States. I long to take back the refineries of our oil. We used to have 17 micro refineries in the province, about 50,000 barrels a day, where the farmers could go show up at the refinery and be filled right from the pipe in diesel in his tractor. We have to go back there. Right now, we're importing $3 billion of diesel every year from BC. There's no reason. So I believe that independence starts by sovereignty. You can be sovereign without being independent, mainly in our country. Quebec showed it. Every state in the United States would dream to have the rights that any province of Canada have. So it's our chance by saying we do not want the status quo. There's like a third option. No, like it's not like the status quo or we leave. There's something else. There's something else that we can do if we have the courage to do it. So that's what I'm talking about. That. And then finally, I just want to read you a bit. I spent a lot of time. So I moved here as a bachelor. I married a girl from Edmonton, born and raised. We have 4 kids. Everybody born and raised in Edmonton. I live in Sylvan Lake now, but and I always struggle mainly with that. What I'm doing right now to say what is an Albertan. I think it's important to define who we are if we want to impose what we want. So I came with 8 heartstrings that I believe define well an Albertan. Heartstring number 1, enduring moral compass. So Judeo-Christian values define our laws and identity. Heartstring number 2, earned equality. Merit matters, not identity markers. Heartstring number 3, hands-off freedom. Small government, stay in your lane. Heartstring number 4, pioneer grit. Family-centered, self-reliant, property respecting. Heartstring number 5, real leaders, real results. Builders, not spenders. Conviction, not corruption. Heartstring number 6, wise land guardianship. Sustainable use by those who live here. Heartstring number 7, move or die accountability, self-reliance, personal responsibility. And heartstring number 8, proud Canadian Albertan, honor the past but defend the future. And I believe that we need to start putting that down, laying these foundation to be able to control an immigration, to be able to control, okay, you can move here, but here's the condition. This is our value on this territory. And you have to sign that you're going to respect these values. So we need to have represent our own affairs around the world, have our own office, not depend on the Canadian embassy. You know what Quebec does? The only thing that the province don't have to do is sign the treaty. So what Quebec does, they sign all of their deals, and then once they're ready, they call Ottawa, hey, we need you in Germany, in Munich next week. You need to sign a treaty. And they come and they sign the treaty. So it's all a question of attitude, a political attitude. Finally, during all that tour and all that, there's something that bugged me. We always said that we leave 30 billion more than what we receive per year on Ottawa's desk. And my question was, where is that 30 billion? What is that 30 billion? Where does it come from? So I did a lot of research for that book. In fact, it's a bit thicker than it should be because all the 1/3 of the book, it's all my research work. But I came with a table with the 8 money suckers, like what drain us in this province. What drains the 30 billion? And the number 1 money suckers is our federal personal income tax. So we leave 12 billion more on the table than what we should. The federal corporate income tax, 5 billion. Equalization is number 3. So it's a bronze medal equalization. There's 2 that cost us way more than equalization at 3.3 billion. Old age benefits that we don't collect. So that's 3 billion a year. Missing federal presence. So they take our tax and they create jobs in Miramichi and in Prince Edward Island. You know that in Prince Edward Island, the Atlantic province has been created in 1982 no, we want to cancel the equalization. We can't because since 1982, it's part of our constitution. Trudeau brought it in, and he brought it in because he wanted to create these welfare provinces. Because to change the constitution in Canada, we need 7 provinces representing 50% of the population. So by creating the Atlantic province as welfare provinces, he guaranteed that constitution would never be able to be open. Because yes, Quebec takes half of it, but the 13 billion that Quebec receives is only 8% of their budget. Meanwhile, the equalization is 25% of PI budget, of Nova Scotia budget. And on top of that, they are the champion in federal job. In PEI, 24% of the population works in government job. On top of that, so you have to add that on the cost, not only the equalization. So Canadian pension plan, 2.5 to 3 billion. We leave on GST and Existat 2 billion, and employment insurance 1.5 billion. So what I've done, I created these little books that tells you how can we get our money back, starting by equalization. Quebec received 3.6 billion more than they should every year because they hide some wealth. And the way they do that is that they have a special rate for electricity in Quebec. So as soon as you have a meter on your house, you have rate D. Rate D is half the market price. So basically, Quebec leave on the table to fund the electricity to its citizen, 7 billion a year. And the equalization calculate half of that. So there's 3.5 billion a year that they get because they just don't charge full market price. So why don't we do the same here with oil and gas? No, we can ask for our royalties to be paid in kind. So why do we pay our gas? So basically I built that and to come to the same level of Quebec, and that wouldn't cost us a penny in the budget. This is only taking some royalties and changing them in kind instead of in cash, and that will make us poorer by 3.6 billion in front of equalization. So we will gain back 3.6 billion back by doing that, and then we would not have to pay gas from September to June. From September 15, June 15, you just pay a carrying cost of your gas. Gas would be free. We could do that, and then we could do the other thing. The other thing that I'm proposing in there is that as the oil goes up and the pump price goes up, 1/3 of the royalty goes in reduction at the pump. So the more the oil goes up, the lower the price at the pump goes. It's our oil. It's no. Why don't we benefit of it? If we don't, we give the money to Quebec. So basically, it's to do exactly what they do, just to make us look poorer on paper and bring back the money to the people of this province. My second book is on the Canada Pension Plan. So I believe the problem right now that we have with the Alberta Pension Plan is that we don't have any plan on the table. This is why people don't want to let go their CPP. Because I don't want to let go something that I don't know what I will get after that. So this is a plan, how we can build our Alberta pension plan based on the Quebec model, and how we don't even have to wait for how much we get back from Ottawa to make it work. So, and here I have the Canada Revenue Agency. So Premier says that it would cost us $1 billion to build up our own agency. And it would cost us $500 million to run it. Well, right now, with CRA, all the big companies in the province have 72 hours to give their remittance to Ottawa. And Ottawa has 24 months to give it back. So they make $600 million just in interest on cash down there. So if we would create our own taxation system here to collect our own tax, the running of the system at $500 million a year, plus the creation of the system of $1 billion to put it up, we gain it back. It's a zero cost because we gain it back in interest only just by controlling our cash flow. Plus, then we have a leverage control with Ottawa because then it's us that cut the check there and not the opposite. So, and finally, my last one, it's about EI. So Alberta was the first province to sign a deal with EI in 1996, December 1996. And when Quebec saw that deal in January 1997, they said, these Albertans are brilliant. We'll sign the same deal. So they signed the same deal, but they're getting $5 million more per year with our deal than we got because we're not using it. So again, this is the plans, how to use our own deal to get what Quebec gets. So anyway, so that's my presentation. I invite you. So no, it's that we participate to that referendum. It's very important that we show up in great numbers. It's very important that we push towards the question, which is comments. And that question, by the way, in October 19 is anyway. I can't say it's a nothing burger somehow, but at the same time, it's important that we show up. It's important that we show that we tell we don't want the status quo. And after that, I believe that the pressure needs to be put on our provincial government. I believe that we need to have people that have the courage to pick up what is ours to take. And with these 4 booklets here, if we do what I'm proposing there, out of the $30 billion, we would leave only $8 billion more on the table. It's not great. It's not like if we were independent, but it's already 22. It's a quarter of our budget more than what we spend every year in this province. So I invite you, Baha will go with the bucket. I invite you to know these tours are totally benevolent. I'm not paid to be here tonight. Nobody is paid in our tour, and yeah, we're just based on donation. So I invite you to donate. Yes, and beside that, we're going to take a break of 10 minutes, and we'll have open for question after that. So thank you.
All right, so we're going to intermission, guys, and we'll see you in a bit.
and grab the posters that are there. And grab posters for upcoming events and share them to people that you might know in those areas and ask them to share them to their friends. It's what I call the shampoo method. I'm bald as a cucumber. But I do remember the commercials from the 1970s and 80s for Clairol shampoo. You tell two friends, and they'll tell two friends, and so on, and so on. And that is what we have to do to get the message out in communities. We've been doing mail-outs, and in a community where they actually get into the mailbox in time, last night in Vermilion, we had 90 people. And the night before. So it's just a matter of whether it got into your mailbox in time. So we have to rely upon each other to get the word out on these events. The other thing is if you know somebody that has got prime real estate on the side of a highway that would love to have a banner, I have a bunch more coming in. They should be in within a couple of days here. And they're 8 foot by 16 foot. And we're looking to put them on prime highway real estate. Also, we have 4x8 signs available. If you know anybody that's going near Muir, I cannot fit one of them in my van. Otherwise, I would bring some with me. But if you know somebody that's got highway frontage that they don't want something that big, but they want something like a 4x8, we've got 4x8s available in Muir. So, and also we're looking for sponsors for those because those big banners are $450 a piece. So if you feel like sponsoring a banner, or you know somebody that would sponsor a banner, we're always looking for assistance with those banners. Now on to the questions. Okay, so what we'll do is if you have a question, just raise your hand and Brad will bring the microphone to you, and he'll hold the mic so we don't get any pontifications. But you're welcome to ask any question that you. Oh, one already. Two already.
And important to, if you have questions, to talk to the microphone, because this has been a live stream, and people on the stream actually want to hear what you say. Okay? We don't want to have a situation where people go like this and nobody hears, because now nobody hears on the stream. So.
My question has to do with CPP and the Alberta Pension Plan. From my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is if we get our own Alberta Pension Plan, that's for the Albertans to start to contribute in. What happens to the rest of us that are already on CPP and we're not working anymore? What's going to happen there?
Well, so the way the CPP agreement is done is that any province can withdraw from it within 1 year notice. And the condition is that they have to offer at least what CPP offer or more in terms of payment, because the CPP in a way it's a Ponzi scheme. It's they get money from the left and they pay the right. That's why we had an increase by almost 200% of the premium for employers and employees in the past 10 years, because they're getting a lot of people to pay and they don't have money to pay. So so basically the way the process would be that we have to put together the structure and we have to guarantee to offer you, or you receive CPP, at least what you get from CPP or more. And right now, to guarantee that, what the employers of the province and the employee of the province, those that work, are paying and contributing right now to CPP is $3 billion more than what it costs to give your check. So we can guarantee that we can at least give you at the minimum what you get for the CPP and more, even without getting back the, because the other portion is the investment fund, but the investment fund is quite recent, and it's only 700 billion. When I say only, it's just because with 22 billion million insured, it's not a lot. So again, in a scenario where the federal don't want to get us our fair share of that, we can guarantee a full retirement, full payment within the initial program.
That's for all of us that are retired now. I've got children that are working. If you know the history of this province, with our oil field, we've had people come as far as way from Nova Scotia to work. What happens if one of my children that are working has to go to another province and they've been paying an Alberta pension plan? Is that going to follow them, or do now they have to get on the CPP program?
No, the pension follow. So the pension follow once you, like if you're a Quebecer and have and are allowed to get the Quebec pension plan, you can go live anywhere in the world and you will get your pension. The same with CPP. CPP, you can go live in, you can go decide to go live in England and you'll get your checks down there.
Answer my question about Alberta. People who are growing up now working in Alberta and they have to change province for employment, is the Alberta pension plan going to follow them?
Well, in that case, if they stop paying as they go, what they paid here would remain. Like in Quebec. In Quebec, if we know, I moved here, I was 35 years old. So as I was paying Quebec, what I paid in Quebec remained in Quebec. Here I pay within the CPP. And then when I retired, my portion in Quebec will be transferred to the CPP if I stay here.
So you're telling me that have sons and sons-in-law that are working here, if they move to another province for work, the APP will go over to the CPP and they'll continue to get paid.
So yes, so there's agreement between the pension plans, and if they, let's say for 20 years here and they pay another 20 years in another pension plan, the 20-year portion here will then be transferable. So,
Years.
No, I'm just saying it's an example. If they work 10 years there, the portion that they pay, like if you go to Quebec, you have to pay for the Quebec pension plan, okay? And
yes.
no, but what I'm saying is that we copy the model here. So basically, I'm just explaining to you that we have a running example for the past 60 years of a successful pension plan that is managed by the province and not the federal government. And all the details of transferring pension from one province to the other between the two programs has been ironed out in 1965. So that there's a system already in place to deal with these cases. That's what I'm saying. So it's not, we don't have to think or to reinvent how we make our pension portable from one under the agreements under which as on pension. So for the CPP to manage Alberta, they already been managing with Quebec for the past 60 years these transfers. So it's just to add one province, and the program already provisioned for that, a provision that's been working for the past 60 years.
It's just important to speak on the microphone because you can hear on the stream.
I want to address your question a little bit first. Now, he's talking about with Confederation. If we were to have the Alberta pension plan within an independent Alberta, it would be no different than if I go work in the United States and I pay into a pension plan there. I get paid when I retire. If I've paid into that pension plan, I get paid out of that pension plan in the United States. I get paid out of the pension plan wherever I work. I spent 30 years working overseas in many different countries, and each one of those countries has a different type of pension plan. And when I officially retire, I'm medically retired now, but when I officially retire, I will actually get some pension from Saudi Arabia. I'll get some pension from where else would I get it? From Germany. I'll get some from Australia. But I'll also get my CPP at this point in time. So it can be paid out from many different.
Yeah, and I think that was going to be my answer to you. Isn't the simplest answer, you'll get two separate pensions, the Quebec and the Canadian CPP, because you paid into both.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's
That's
correct.
the simple answer.
Yeah, that's correct. That gentleman there. Yeah.
I think you just answered my question, because I worked with people who were from other countries, and when they left Canada, their CPP would go to them in, like, the country I'm talking about is Japan. So whether it's within our country, Canada, or Alberta, or worldwide, your CPP goes to you because that is your pension, correct?
You're forced to pay it.
Yeah, they have to pay it.
Yeah, that is 100% correct. Another good example is Chinese immigrants that come over and become permanent residents do not become citizens. The reason that they don't become citizens, a lot of them, there are some that do, but the reason is because they can draw from both pension plans, and they can. But if they become a citizen, then they lose the Chinese pension.
It's just relating to what we were talking. I also know Irish people who have Irish pension coming to Canada. So this agreement is also within different countries. So once you pay into your CPP, no matter where you go in the country or where you go in the world, that is your money and will be directed to you wherever you end up at, correct?
Correct.
And also, for example, my parents, like I was born in Chile. My parents, well, my dad mostly, he worked as an engineer over there for about 10 years or so. And just about 2 years ago, he got a phone call from the Chilean pension plan, said that he was owed about $25,000 or something. I don't know the exact number, might be wrong. But there is a clause when, and even if I, as a Chilean citizen, I'm a Canadian citizen, if I were to go back to Chile, I'm still entitled to Quebec pension plan because I lived in Quebec for 20 years, and the CPP. So I can technically get both pension plans from the Quebec pension plan as from the CPP as well, even though I was living in another country. So when countries develop their pension plans, there's almost always this portability clause that no matter where you go, you can always get the money back when you retire or not. Those things are built with that clause in question. Now, to the Alberta pension plan specifically, that's going to be almost the same thing as well too. So, and that's interesting because every time we get asked this question about the pension plan, and also one thing, particularly the pension plan, it was stipulated is that in order for Alberta to have a pension plan, this is actual legislation, by the way, from the Alberta, from the Canadian Pension Act. A province who desires to implement a pension has, and this is on legislation, on paper, has to deliver a plan that delivers better benefits with lower costs. That's on paper.
It's equal or better, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. But just so you show that there is room for that as well, you know. So it's not, you're not going to lose your CPP or anything, and it will take probably a few years for the actual Alberta pension plan to kick in. So,
Well, under the agreement of the pullout, it's a 3-year time limit. In order to set up the Alberta pension plan, there's a 3-year overlap between the two to do it, so that it's.
Sorry, what? Well, what I did with that book is that I didn't just explain that. I kind of carved out what basically I look at us all that since 1965. Port that to Alberta, and then speaking of Chile, Chile has a self-directed portion of our pension that you can have, and I believe it's a great idea to have a self-directed portion of your pension that you can decide to. And Chile offer like 5 level, high risk to low risk, A, B, C, D, E, and every year, in fact, in Chile, every year you receive a statement of where your pension plan is at, because it's supposed to be your money, and how much you're it, and then which portion you can direct, tell them, okay, I want that portion of the money to be put in that program or something else. So I believe it would open the door to that type of stuff here in Alberta.
What I'm hearing is it's contingent on the fact that Ottawa doesn't renege. I'll still collect my CPP because I'm retired. I will never pay into the Alberta pension plan. What happens if Ottawa reneges, say, okay, you guys have separated, therefore we're not going to pay, we don't have the money to pay out to Alberta.
Even if
now,
you
I'm basing this on history. I seen Ottawa renege on a few things. During World War II, they were selling war bonds. After World War II, the government says we don't have the money to pay it back, and so they null and void them. What's to stop Ottawa? You say, oh, it's on paper agreement. Ottawa has a history of reneging. What has Alberta got in place if they say, okay, we're not going to pay this out? What is going to happen to us seniors that are not back in the workforce? There goes our CPP. We've never paid into the Alberta pension plan. What happens to us?
Okay, first off, when Alberta gets its own pension plan, Ottawa is required under the agreement to transfer back the money that Alberta has paid into it that was not collected already. So that equals out to, and whether we get it or not is another question, but that equals out to something $300 and some billion. 300, what was it again? 354. But let's say Ottawa gives us nothing back. Because of that $3 billion that we're paying, if we have to set up a completely equal pension plan or better, we're paying right now, what's that? Right, but we're paying $3 billion more in payments every year than is getting collected. Now, remember that the pension plans as they're set up now are literally Ponzi scheme. The money that you put into your pension is gone, 100% gone. It is what is being paid in now that is paying your pension. So if we switch to the Alberta pension plan, it doesn't change your payments whatsoever. Your payments stay the same.
If I'm understanding you correctly, you're telling me if Ottawa was to renege, the Alberta pension plan would cover those that should have been getting it from CPP.
Correct.
You're telling me that?
Yes.
That's correct.
Are you guaranteeing it?
Yes.
Yes, because it's guaranteed under the law.
Yeah, but we just said there's legislation in place. If Ottawa reneges on it, they're going against the law that's already been set.
But
Go.
if Ottawa says we don't honor our side of the contract, well, on our side we're not obligated to send them payments anymore, and we're already sending them $3 billion more payments than what it costs to maintain the actual pension plan. So what I'm saying is that even if Ottawa would say, okay, I renege, we're stopped, I say, okay then, so no sir, here's the Alberta government pension plan check coming your way instead of coming from the CPP.
You'll take care of the
Absolutely.
CPP if they renege on it. Alberta's going to take care of their seniors.
Absolutely, it will probably save about $1,500 per employee per employers by doing so, because we won't have to get that $3 billion more. We can just take care. So in the province, we're generating enough money to take care of all the pensioners from now and for those coming up within, I think, until 2055 at the rate that we have right now. So it's absolutely impossible that you lose your pension, even if Ottawa act weirdly or absolutely go against their own contractual agreement. No, exactly. Alberta government, I mean, I cannot see any premier in Alberta telling you, okay, well, so bad, so sad, no more money, and don't pay CPP. So if something goes wrong with Ottawa, the Alberta government will just pick up and will just tell all the business that already pay a portion of their taxes because we do have a revenue agency in Alberta. By the way, we have the most efficient revenue collection agency in the world in this province. Our revenue agency in this province collects corporate tax, provincial corporate tax, and our cost of collecting per $100 is 31 cents. The CRA run at $3.25 per 100 collected. So we're 10% to collect the same amount of money in cost than what CRA cost us. So again, in case of emergency, we can tell all the employers of Alberta, stop sending to CPP, send to the Alberta Revenue Agency. Alberta Revenue Agency can start a contingency and start paying all the check that CPP would retain. It's so important in our society for any government, provincial government, to take a different decision. No, I've done politics in Quebec, and here politics is quiet. No, in Quebec I had car vandalized, I had rocks through my living room window, and I could see that happening if that would be the case here too. I would probably the first to throw a rock to the premier window if they would do that.
Well, the first thing you got to understand is I don't trust governments because I've seen them backtrack on too many things.
Yes, and with good reason. But again, this is why it's important to put some. And this is what Quebec, when they put up that program in '65, they knew that they needed to shield it from the politicians in terms of decisions. So they've done two things. They gave independence to the Caisse. It's called the Caisse de dépôt de placement du Québec. They gave independence to the Caisse. They forced them to invest 40% of whatever they collect within the province or Canada. So basically that cope with their willingness to keep some money in. And then they create another corporation beside it. It's a slush fund. Now it's called Investissement Québec. And when they created the pension plan, that Caisse de dépôt part out with something like 10 billion. And 10 billion Quebec, it's another organization that it's called Investissement Québec right now. And this is the toy of the politician. All the decisions made by Investissement Québec are strictly political. But the CDPQ said, "No, what? You're not touching our money. Play with that pile of cash there. Don't touch ours." And then there are very strict rules on how they have to invest. And I see an Alberta pension plan having the same very strict rules, not to let any premier, any government go and put their nose in there. So again, it's just a question of looking what worked and duplicate what worked in our country.
But it doesn't even have to get that complicated, because the way that the pension plans work, if they're collecting money, so the Alberta pension plan starts collecting money, because of the way it works, that's paying for the seniors that have retired now. So because of the way it's set up as a Ponzi scheme, in 1965, when people started collecting, they had never paid a dime in. So it's always been behind the 8 ball ever since it started. So it's the money that comes in now so when an employee pays his CPP, that is what is paying for your pension right now. But under the new Alberta pension plan, if it's set up properly, within 30 years of it being set up, it could be totally self-sufficient. Because of the excess that we are paying right now to Ottawa, that money could be invested, and 30 years from now, maybe nobody has to pay into the pension plan. Not guaranteeing that, but that's what the numbers show, that if it was properly invested, could happen. And so it would be a perpetual pension for Albertans.
And the worst with the Canada pension plan is that the average pension paid in Canada is $833 a month, average. And then you look at what an average employee, full-time employee pays right now. An employee's employer will pay $1,200 a month in. If you compound in a regular investment, $1,200 a month for let's say a career of 30 years, you should have a nest egg of roughly 1.5, 1.6 million looking after you, and then out of that, the federal pays you only $833 per month. So it's a very, very bad deal. The Canada Pension Plan, it is a bad deal.
I'm not disagreeing what we say. My concern is, you just told me, yeah, Alberta would take over if Ottawa reneged, and that's my concern. I'm concerned for my children 30 years from now, but I'm not going to be around in 30 years. I'm 72 now. 30 years put me well over 100.
102. Oh, that's good. That's a
So I don't expect to see those kind of dividends. What I'm concerned about is the here and now.
Yes.
What will they do if things go sour?
Well, I believe that, again, whatever scenario and whatever hardball Ottawa decide to play, our biggest vulnerability right now is that we don't collect our own taxes. So they always can close the tap and reevaluate what they transfer every month. And this is why it's important to start creating these structures. And as for the CPP, we have a province that is rich enough that we could turn around very quickly and compensate if ever something would go south. By the way, speaking of CPP, speaking of the condition to get out of there, it's Daniel Smith Bill 1, when she came premier, was sovereign Alberta within United Canada. That's Bill 1. Bill 2, it was to add conditions to get out of the CPP. So what did she do? She sent a message to Ottawa very clearly saying, guys, I bark, but I don't bite. Keep the money and let me bark. That's what she did. So, sadly.
I have some people online asking questions in regards to kind of what happens to the CPP and all those things. What's going to happen to people getting age?
Yeah, so age and all the rest. So again, it's a question of having our sovereignty, taking our sovereignty. So healthcare and age and social services, it's all provincial. And again, we are dependent on a bunch of conditions from the federal government because we don't collect our taxes. But if we collect our taxes, we take care of age, we take care of all the rest, and all these services is the same thing. No, people talk about the RCMP. Oh yeah, the RCMP is it's subsidized. No, the federal pay 30% of the services. Well, they pay 30% of our own money. So it's not we're subsidizing our own RCMP. So why don't we let Ottawa pulling us over for speeding tickets in Maleg? Like it doesn't make any sense. No, we need to stop that. The other thing with RCMP that is tragic is that my son, who was born in Edmonton, I live in Sylvan Lake right now. If he goes in the RCMP, can never ever become the chief of his department if he doesn't speak French, which is absolutely atrocious. Like this is what all the RCMP department across the province. The head of the department, the one the best paid, the one that takes the order and all that, all come from New Brunswick, Northern Ontario, Quebec, because they need to be bilingual. And this is a scandal. This is like you know what? My son who speaks only English should have the right to become the chief of police of the small town. No, so anyway, so that's another reason why we have to get rid of the RCMP.
But touching more upon your golden rule, he who has the gold makes the rules. Yeah. The Canada Health Act is unconstitutional. Yeah. Health is the provincial jurisdiction, 100% under the Canada Health or under the Constitution. However, because we send money to Ottawa, if the province decides it's not going to follow what the Health Canada has said, they refuse to give us our health transfer payments back, which is not their jurisdiction. But they use it and hold it over our heads continually because we don't collect our own taxes and then give Ottawa what they are due instead of we pay it all to Ottawa, and Ottawa doles back what they feel that we deserve. It should be the other way around. We dole what they deserve, not what they dole to us.
I will go a step further. What Quebec did after the 1995 referendum in 98, they put together a crew of bureaucrats in Gatineau on the other side of the river. And their job, I think they're about 600, and their job is full-time to nag every federal bureaucrats to get their money back. So Quebec monitors. So when you live in Quebec, you do your provincial tax report and your federal tax report. You send a check to Ottawa, a check to Quebec. For the portion of the check sent to Ottawa, there's bureaucrats that monitor every service that federal bring back to Quebec, and for every penny they don't receive back on that check, they go and call for it and say, you know what? You were supposed to give us like that much service. You just gave us like this. Give us back 100 million. You know what? We can do that service at better shot. Give us back 200 million. We'll take care of it. And all that, Ottawa cannot do anything because it's constitutional. It's how we have to play. So if you want to be real Canadian and real, according to our constitution, this is what you need to do.
Hi, so this would be an additional comment. If Ottawa does decide to, Ottawa is very corrupt, and they're becoming spiteful and vengeful even towards this movement, pitting themselves against it. And so if they did decide to renege on what they owe, another angle would be to shame them on an international stage to all of their trading partners, and that would apply massive pressure because it's going to look really bad. So.
Yeah, and again, it would be against the contract. I would say that if we remain in Canada, it would be easier to negotiate than if we separate. Because if we separate, again, I believe there's going to be a lot of foul play. But again, in a situation of separation that we just cut the ties with Ottawa money-wise, well, then we control cash flow to do what we want to do with our money first, and let them sue us for the rest. This is what Quebec does. Quebec always do what they do, and if Ottawa is not happy, let just sue us. No, so
use the example of Bill 101.
Yeah. So yeah, Bill 101 is a good one. So 1977. The Quebec government put Bill 101, which is the law controlling the French language in Quebec, forbidden to speak English in businesses, and forbidding to put English priority on signs and stuff like that. And that was contested by Ottawa right away, and the Supreme Court ruled against it. So said you don't have the right, Quebec, to do that. And then Quebec say, okay. What part of that do we don't have the right to do? This, and this. So they changed that, put back the law in place. Then the feds sue again, another 10 years. Supreme Court judge say, Supreme Court judgment, that you don't have the right to do that. Okay, what can't we do? So right now we're at the 5th judgment of the Supreme Court on the same law, and it's still in force 50 years later. So this is what it is. Meanwhile here we have a local judge coming from New Brunswick, putting a judgment, putting like crapping on 200,000 citizens and we bow to it. Meanwhile Quebec receive a judgment from Supreme Court and say basically we won't follow it. What will you do? Send the army? You already did it in 1970, and look, we're still running. So. Keep on trying. So this is the attitude that we need to have. In the same day that Premier Smith passed that serving Alberta within United Canada, Quebec passed a law because they just had the provincial election, and there's some MNA, of MLA, that didn't want to pay allegiance to the Crown. So they passed a law that they don't have to pay allegiance to the Crown anymore. It's your choice. And what did Ottawa did? Nothing. So when they saw that, they say, okay, you know what? We're pissed by that royal assent. We think that royal assent is absolutely stupid, and so basically they send a message, they pass a law in their legislature telling Ottawa that for now on, the lieutenant governor has a role of clerk to report to them what they do, but their law will become enforced as soon as it's voted in. They won't wait for social assent to put there in the Quebec Gazette.
And that passed by anonymously.
Yeah, that anonymously in 2023, and to after the vote to make a bigger declaration to Ottawa, they went right away and they put a for sale sign in front of the Lieutenant Governor house in Quebec City, and they told Ottawa, you know what, that we won't pay for it anymore. Pay for your system if you want your clerk here. So yeah. So, and what did Ottawa did? Nothing. What can they do? Send the army? Like bomb the place? Like
Tell them what they did when King Charles came over
Oh,
to
yeah.
open Parliament.
yeah, that was funny as well. Carney invited King Charles for the throne speech, and the Bloc didn't show up, of course, for that throne speech. And Quebec, at the same time as the king was giving his speech, vote again another unanimous vote at the National Assembly of Quebec that they won't relate to the crown anymore. Nothing. They cut all ties to the crown. That they don't recognize any sovereignty of the crown, any place of the crown. That the crown is no more part of the Quebec society, and they all vote that. And then what they've done, they send a courier to deliver hand by hand to the king when he get out of his speech. So yeah. What happened? Nothing.
We were all taught that Quebecers were the evil ones growing up, and that they just were our sworn enemies. But you know what? We need to follow their lead.
I will go a step further. My expectation is on October 20th, whatever the result, I believe. And the Parti Québécois is coming back in power. I will tell you something. Quebecers are way more thirsty for sovereignty than for cash. And they don't care about the equalization payment. Absolutely don't care. They would rather renege that 13 billion. They would do that way more than not being sovereign. Any day, any time of the day. And then they have a bunch of resources that they can unlock to compensate for that loss of budget. But plus there's the Caisse de dépôt, who already have anyway, no Quebecer knows that they receive 13 billion a year. It's not known in Quebec. Nobody talk about it. Nobody knows about it. It's a nothing burger. Nobody knows what you're talking about. Okay, so the other thing they know is that they always pay too much for the federal. That's the thing that 99% of Quebec will tell you. We just pay too much for Ottawa. So if they find an ally in this country saying, hey, we believe the same, can you help us? Oh, they will come. Like they will be our best ally. And that's something that I would love to work towards on October 20th, is to create kind of a committee, Alberta, Quebec, to fight for sovereignty of the provinces. And Quebec will be our best ally in that. Not only that, but since 1968, there's a research chair that exists at Montreal University on sovereignty. They have a library of documentation, all in French, but now with AI we can translate very quickly everything. But they have a library of documentation on sovereignty within the Westminster system, and most Quebec politicians know that content quite by heart. There are. I never saw, again, on this planet, within all the Commonwealth, no other politician manipulating the Westminster system like Quebecers does. And we need to learn to do the same. And I believe that, again, October 19, whatever the result, we need to bring Quebec intelligentsia, in Alberta to work with us, to get to a point. My dream, I will tell you what it is. I don't believe in a negotiation on the Constitution. I told you why. Because the Constitution, Trudeau, by bringing that welfare province system, basically locked the Constitution down in the safe and threw the key to the sea. We cannot change the Constitution. What we need to do, we need to sit with Quebec, Alberta, Quebec, and build up a plan and build up a way that we want to work with Ottawa. and then go sit in Ottawa saying, guys, this is how it works from now on. Like tomorrow, we're going to make a referendum. Alberta, Quebec, same day, same question. The two provinces, if Saskatchewan wants to join, come in. If Manitoba wants to join, come in. And just instead of asking for a round of constitutional negotiation that cannot happen, practically, just imposing, just saying, otherwise, this is how it works. Now, like January 1st, 2027, this is how we will operate from now on with you guys. And if you're not happy, well, then we separate.
See, I agree with Ben on most of that. However, we do not have the political will in this province, unfortunately, to do what.
We can raise the people.
Yeah, but it's going to take longer than January 1st, 2027. I can guarantee you that.
Hold on, somebody has a question first.
My question is, those bills that are being passed are really, really scary for me and for the future of my kids and grandkids. I don't want to see those bills happening and squashing our freedom. And so, like, is Danielle Smith in favor of what you're talking about, and how is this going to work?
I know what I had the privilege to have, like, I don't know, since she's premier, probably at least 16 hours alone with her. I know basically what she talk is not often what she walk. One thing that I know is that she will defend freedom. I just don't know if she has the courage to go to the extent that she should to make sure that she defends freedom, because the administration of justice in this province is exclusively provincial. So the federal can put laws like 3 times that book, and we can decide in the province not to apply these laws on this territory. And they have no way to enforce that. We can decide to create our own FinTrack instead of using the federal FinTrack for banking. We can. ATB already owns its own rails, so all the banking system works by rails, and all the 5 big banks are the same rails. ATB got its own rails that was negotiated by Lougheed at the time. So we have all the tools. We're just not using them, and I believe that it's the same with the gun grab program. What I reproach her and her government right now is that she said that she will not enforce, but meanwhile the PAL remains federal, and the feds decide that you're illegal because they know that you own that gun that's on their list that you didn't give back and that they cannot seize. Well, they can make you a criminal outside of the province. So, and they can decide not to renew your PAL. So I believe what should be done right now by the province is to start emitting PALs, provincial PALs, because then you can relinquish your federal PALs and just let the provincial one. And it's all these action items that are not being done, and I don't know why.
And Bill C9, as an example, Bill C9, I actually asked the Premier directly about that bill, and she said that she was not going to enforce it here in the province. There's a problem with that. There's a huge problem with that. It still makes me, if an arrest warrant is issued for me, okay, I won't get arrested here. Second, I step inside of an airport. Second, I step across the provincial boundary, I'm going to get arrested. Quebec has used the notwithstanding clause. The other thing that she said to me is the notwithstanding clause is for provincial bills only, our bills. That's not true. There's 2 notwithstanding clauses. There's the one that they passed, the provincial notwithstanding clause, and there is the federal notwithstanding clause against federal bills. Quebec has used that 1,500 times since the 1980s, 1,500 plus times. Yeah. We've used it 4 times. They veto they use the notwithstanding clause for every single bill the Ottawa ever passes. Quebec goes, notwithstanding clause, it doesn't apply to us.
The Clarity Act, in fact, that came in force in February 2000, the day after it came in force, Quebec voted that they will not respect the referendum and everything pertaining to the conduct on democracy is provincial jurisdiction only. So Ottawa cannot impose the Clarity Act on Quebec democratic activities. And now this is what I found very concerning. Now I heard from, again last week with her, I heard from her own mouth saying that if it's a yes on the commencement of stuff, she will absolutely put us under the Clarity Act process. So
Not even that. It goes no more nefarious than that, because the Clarity Act sets out the rules, and one of the rules that the Clarity Act says is after a successful referendum, you go into negotiations, and at that time there is the other provinces, the federal government, and the First Nations. She says before she will ask the referendum question, she is going to do negotiations with the First Nations.
That's right.
In wrong steps. And the second thing that she said is that she must get approval on that question, from the Parliament, which is not what the Clarity Act says. It's against the law what she's suggesting that she do.
Yeah, so
it's in violation of the law.
But she's twisting the traps, because there are 7 traps with the Clarity Act. I have it on my book here, page 251. There are 7 vetoes. The first one, there's no defined majority threshold. So Ottawa decides after the vote if it's clear enough. Number 2, House of Commons judge question clarity. Alberta have 10% of the seat, by the way, to judge if the question is clear or not. Third, it's subjective representativeness standard. So Ottawa can reject based on turnout, demographics, or anything. So Ottawa can decide, oh, you know what? Yes, you had 95% participation within most of the population, but only 30 with the First Nations. So your vote is not correct because you didn't consult the First Nations. And then negotiation requires common approval from Ontario, Quebec, who controls 59% of the vote. Okay. Condition number 5: the Senate have to approve, and Alberta have 5.7% of the seat of the Senate. Condition number 6: the Governor General have to approve, which is unelected Prime Minister appointed official. And then condition number 7: it needs to go to the 750 or unanimity formula. Alberta cannot meet either threshold alone, or no province can. This is why this clause makes the Constitution impossible to change. So this is what the Clarity Act asks.
Right, but the Clarity Act has one additional line, and that one additional line gives us a path forward. If they do all of that, the Clarity Act clearly says if they do not act in good faith, we need 2 things. We need the will of the people, which we've already shown in the referendum, whether they accept it or not under the law. We've already did that. And the number 2 is international recognition. So the Clarity Act actually puts that as its final line in the Clarity Act. So we do still have, yes, those are a bunch of traps. They're going to try and trap us, but we do still have an out.
So you know what? The case with Alberta is that it's like if you go in a store, and you have this revolving door, and then now you have these automatic revolving door that I don't like using them. I don't know if they will jam in the middle or, so imagine that you have the choice between the revolving door that you're not controlling, that you don't know if it will jam or it will start, and if you push too much it stops and all that, or a regular door beside it. That's what Alberta politics is. We always choose the revolving door, while Quebec just goes right through beside it. So, and it's the same with the Clarity Act. I don't believe that no province should submit the decision of their people to the Clarity Act. The Clarity Act is a travesty of legislation that should be repealed.
I have a lot of respect for Danielle, but on this issue, I don't know what's going on. I can't speak for what's going on in her mind. It is actually very disconcerting because she keeps saying that I want sovereignty within a united Canada, but is making no moves to do that. We agree, we'll all agree, like I'll agree with Ben on 98% of it. It's that final 2% that him and I don't agree on. That's a big 2%, but it's a good milk. Yeah, it's the cream. I consider it the cream. But if you're going to say you want sovereignty within a united Canada, then give us sovereignty within a united Canada.
Yeah.
Don't give us this wishy-washy crap that we're getting right now. And for me to speak out about Daniela is a big thing because I have a lot of respect for her, but on this issue, it's dropping very fast.
Yeah, and as well on the sovereignty issue, that I spoke about the royalty that we pay, that we deposit at the CIBC every Friday afternoon. This is a lot of money that we give. Every $2 million that they do over the weekend, they keep afloat CIBC keep afloat for the royalty of about $2 billion. Well, $2 billion, even at 3%, like you know how many jobs it creates. You know how many soccer leagues it supports. This is what we don't think. When we send stuff to be managed outside of the province, well, we're creating no kindergarten at the outside. We're paying for school at the outside of the province. We're paying for soccer league and hockey leagues and all that goes at the outside of the province because people that works there spend there. So it's super important. And I have seen no intention. And to change it, what you need a Brian Jean, Minister of Energy, getting in his office one morning, putting his jacket on the hook, and taking his email and writing to his deputy minister, please shut down the account at CIBC, open an ATB. This is a ministerial order. Period. You don't need a vote. You don't need nothing. This is an administrative procedure, and it's not done.
And we're losing $104 million a year to the eastern neither, that could be going into the Alberta coffers.
And I will go a step further. There's 13 provincially regulated institutions in the province. We have ATB and 12 credit union. If we would spread just our float, our long-term deposit that we already have now, so we have two big accounts in the province: RBC for our Persian account and CIBC for our royalties. If we just at least deposit at ATB and then split amongst the 12 credit union to their size. Don't send $34 billion to BVCU. They won't know what to do with it. But no, put a ratio like BVCU. They have $600 million deposit. Well, send them another 40 million or something like that. Every penny that we send in this credit union increase their capacity to lend to Albertans. So instead, we send that to RBC and to CIBC that has no limit to lend. No. So and the other thing is that all provincially regulated institution, 100% of their deposit is backed by us. The province back 100% of the deposit of all credit union and ATB because ATB is the treasury branch. Why the account that we have with CIDC so CIBC, RBC are covered by CIDC, the federal protection. There's only 100,000 protected in this account by the federal government. So why do we take the risk? Why do we do that? It's insanity.
Well, you kind of answered it. I was going to say, so what should we do? What, as individuals, can we do to convince the provincial government that we want to change? Write letters, protest? I don't know what to do.
Physical letters are your best option to complain. Don't send an email. An email will get lost in the system. They have to open up and physically read letters. And they will read a physical letter. Emails, those type of things do not work.
And you don't need to pay a stamp if you want to send to MLA, just so you know. Just so if you want to send a letter to your MLA or to the government in Edmonton, there's no need for postage. It's free of charge, just so you know.
But maybe you'll have to do a Indigenous consultation before. We'll see.
Or you can do what I do. I send 10 letters a day, just so I know them, from 2 different locations, so they will not be traced back. But that's brute forcing, I guess. Is there somebody who has any questions here? Just raise your hand. We're going to get the microphone to you. Okay.
It's just a comment, what you said, send as many letters. For some of our schools that got built here, a person that we know very well, she was part of the parent council. She had all the letters drafted up, and they mailed letters every day from the school, the Glenavon school it was, and they mailed letters every day from every person in that school daily for a whole 2 months.
Right. Writing letters is much more effective than doing something like an email. An email that you can hit ignore. A written letter is very hard to do that too.
Yes. Well, and then after that, I believe that I do not believe in that it's a sane democracy to only have 2 parties. So anyway, we'll see what the future holds, but I believe that we need to get away from the fear of splitting the vote.
And the easiest way to do that is to get rid of first across the poll.
The what?
The first across the poll election system. If we did it like France did, I don't like a lot of stuff that come out of France, but the one thing I do like is when they hold an election and nobody wins a clear 50% of the vote, the top 2 people go to a runoff the next week until you have somebody that wins a clear 50% of the vote. We would never have had an NDP government if that was the case.
Yeah.
Because no seat was won by during that election by the NDP by a clear 50% majority.
No. In fact, the last majority UCP was won by 2,000 votes across the province. So.
Does anyone here have any more questions before we... Oh, Eden over there. Boom, 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 boom.
It's not a question, it's more of a comment. And I suppose it isn't my opinion, but I believe that Alberta is holding a royal flush, and Ottawa has has a 2 pair, but they're bluffing. They have this extreme bluff that is sending fear, but their hand is weak, and ours is extremely strong. We just have to own it.
Totally agree. We need to have the courage to step up.
I believe that has been our fundamental problem all the way along, and it remains our fundamental problem. And that is why I personally believe that independence is our only path forward.
I personally believe that changing the political realm is the fastest path forward.
No, and we're going to have a conversation, and it is sovereignty within the United Canada versus independent sovereignty, and you know what? It's going to be very cordial, but
cordial.
Yes, cordial, but. We will have some disagreements because, as you can see, it's the end result is what we disagree on. But we do agree on all the steps leading up to whichever variety you want. And it's very important that we do so because if we don't, we're hooped.
There's a sentence in one book of his where he says, or else, I believe it is, if Ottawa doesn't do the right thing. I'd have to look it up in your book, but you're not 100%.
The what, or else?
right in the front part, you said, or else if Ottawa doesn't. I can't remember where it was, what page.
I don't.
See, if yours doesn't work, then you'll go our way.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, we have to be, and again, I believe that the day that Alberta start asserting its constitutional right, the way Quebec does, I believe that we'll end up with a very dysfunctional country, and Ottawa will go beg us to negotiate new deals. So, and this is where we have to push it, because we cannot let them run their show the way they do.
Well, if that's the last of the questions, I would like to thank everybody for coming tonight. I think it's a lively conversation, and hopefully everybody went away with their questions answered. If not, we'll be hanging around. It's going to take us some time to pack things up. Speaking of which, if you're able to give us a hand stacking all the chairs and putting them all away, that would be greatly appreciated. It makes cleanup and getting out of here a lot quicker. With that, I will say goodnight and let Ben say it as well.
Yeah, well, let's pray to close the meeting. So thank you, Lord, for the privilege we have to live in a free country where we can freely speak at least for now. And may you give us the strength to have the conviction of our opinions, and the future of this province is in your hand, and we trust you, and bless everybody here on their return home. In the name of Jesus I pray, amen.
Don't forget that on Monday we'll be in Spruce Grove, and GP on Wednesday. So Ronald Park on Tuesday. But I won't be there though. I will be in Thornfield. Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, so thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Well, thanks very much for tuning in. So don't forget, tomorrow at 7, I will be with Cattle Fair at 7 p.m. Monday, I will with the folks from LTA as well at 7 and Spruce Grove. Tuesday, I will with Jason Levine and Rob Robinson at 7 in Thornhill. I will be there as well, and many other events lining up. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time then.